Okay, so here's a wild thought. What if all the politicians in a country just vanished? No more debates, no new laws, no political drama. You'd think it would be absolute chaos, right? Well, for the last 6 months, France has basically been running that exact experiment. And trust me, the results are not what anyone saw coming.
I mean, it's a question we've all probably joked about at some point. Could things actually run better without the politicians? Well, France has stopped joking and started living that question. For 6 straight months, it's become this unprecedented national experiment. So let's dig into the data and see what's really been happening.
First up, let's talk about jobs. This number, 6.8%, that's France's current unemployment rate. And that's not just a decent number, it's the lowest it has been in 2 decades. And get this record was set while the nation's parliament was completely empty.
And the good news doesn't stop there. Take a look at the wider economy. This number here represents France's GDP growth in just the last quarter. That is the strongest economic performance the country has seen in years. I mean, let that sink in for a second. While the politicians were gone, the economy wasn't just holding steady, it was actually speeding up.
Now, let's look at the money. This is the amount of startup funding raised in that same period, a staggering 9.5 billion euros. That's a 35% jump from the year before. So you've got capital just flooding into a country that has no active legislature. How on earth is this possible?
Well, all of these incredible numbers are happening at the exact same time that France's National Assembly has been completely shut down, a booming economy, and a vacant legislature. This is what everyone is now calling the French paradox.
And this, right here, is the heart of the whole thing. The Palais Bourbon, the very center of French democracy, is sitting totally empty. All 577 of its representatives are gone. And yet, the country itself isn't just surviving. By almost every key metric, it's thriving. To really get our heads around this, we've got to go back and see how this all started.
So you should know this wasn't a military coup or some kind of government collapse. No, it was a really unique series of events that started with a protest and somehow ended with a radical citizen-led decision to just hit the pause button on politics itself.
Let's just walk through the timeline real quick. It all kicked off in the summer of 2025. The government was in total gridlock over the national budget. So, a citizen petition demanding a pause on Parliament just exploded, getting over 4 million signatures. That led to a referendum in October where, and this is stunning, 62% of the public voted to formally suspend Parliament, indefinitely. By December, it was a done deal, and politicians were literally barred from even entering the Assembly building.
So what actually happens when you take all that political infighting and just remove it from the equation? Well, in France, this legislative quiet started to pay some truly remarkable dividends right across the board.
With the politicians out of the way, the country's professional civil service, the bureaucracy, was basically left to just do its job, and boy, did it get efficient. Corporate tax revenues shot up 8%. Public infrastructure spending surged 22%. The trade deficit shrank. Exports grew. Even tax compliance went up by 15%. It's like, without all the political interference, the engine of the state just started running way more smoothly.
And this chart here says it all. That huge jump in infrastructure spending, that represents real projects. Things like new high-speed rail lines that have been stuck in political debates for years. Once you took away the partisan bickering, the existing plans were just executed. Simple as that.
I think the key word here is predictability. The governor of France's central bank, François Villeroy de Galhau, put it perfectly. He said, the moratorium created a virtuous cycle. Because, investors hate uncertainty more than anything. And this shutdown, paradoxically, removed the single biggest source of uncertainty, politics. That newfound stability attracted money, and that money boosted confidence. And the benefits went way beyond just the economy. 180,000 new jobs were created, youth unemployment went down, poverty rates actually dropped partly thanks to this new app that made getting social aid way easier. Even hospital wait times fell by 15%. And with all the partisan fights over green policy silenced, carbon emissions actually dropped by over 5%.
I love this quote. Innovation flourishes in the freeze. That's from a top venture capitalist at France's Public Investment Bank. He called the situation a policy permafrost. Basically, for tech investors, this stability meant they could pour in billions without having to worry that the next election would suddenly come along and change all the rules on them.
Now this right here might be the most surprising result of all. Public trust in the administration, we're talking about the civil servants and the agencies actually running the country, it's skyrocketed from 48% to 65% in just 1 year. It seems people actually started to trust the government more once the politicians were taken out of the picture. But of course, it can't be that simple, right? A country without any elected representatives, no matter how efficient it is, raises some really profound and, frankly, troubling questions about the nature of democracy itself. And yeah, the critics are definitely sounding the alarm. So here's the core debate in a nutshell. On one side, you have the supporters who see this as a new, more agile model they call governance as guardianship, where neutral experts just manage the state for the public good. But on the other side, you've got critics who see a really dangerous slide towards technocratic tyranny, where the voices of the people are silenced by a bunch of unelected bureaucrats.
Political scientist Mark Fesno really captures the opposition's fear with this quote. He's saying, sure, the economy is humming along and services are efficient, but at what cost? He argues that France is risking the very soul of its republic, democratic representation, all for the sake of some smooth administration.
But then you have thinkers on the other side, like the philosopher Yves Michaud. He argues that we're seeing a whole new model emerge. He's the one who frames it as governance as guardianship, where the state is intentionally protected from the chaos of day-to-day politics by competent, apolitical experts. The big question is this just a temporary fix, or is it a blueprint for the future? So, is this whole thing just a temporary French fluke, or are we actually witnessing the birth of a new, maybe post-political model of governance? The answer is still very much up in the air. But one thing is absolutely certain: the rest of the world is watching very, very closely. And that's why this French experiment matters so much, far beyond its own borders. You've got leaders in other European nations that are also plagued by political gridlock, places like Spain and Italy, and they are quietly studying what's going on. They're asking themselves if some form of this parliamentary pruning, as it's being called, could be a solution for them too.
Which brings us right back to that fundamental question that's kind of hanging over the silent halls of the French Parliament. What if all that constant churn of politics wasn't actually propelling the country forward, but was holding it back? What if less government actually yields a better nation? That's a question not just for France to think about, but for all of us.